Well, Dr. Valentin Abe is our first plenary speaker this morning. Dr. Valentin earned his Ph.D. in aquaculture from Auburn University. Years later, he was recognized as one of Auburn's most outstanding alumni. He's the founder of Caribbean Harvest and the Caribbean Harvest Foundation. He has been one of Time Magazine's 100 most influential people of the year. So it's a privilege this morning to have Dr. Valentin with us. He's going to describe a new approach in aquaculture development that can help developing countries be competitive in aquaculture production while protecting their environment. So will you join me in welcoming Dr. Valentin?
Thank you, Bruce, and good morning to all. Before I start, I wanted to pay tribute to a very good friend of mine, a mentor, someone who introduced me to ECHO about 17 years ago. And as I'm taking this stage this morning, I wanted you all to remember my dear friend, Dr. Keith Flanagan. And last year, when Brian, his son, asked me to come and speak at this year's conference, I told Brian I would swim to 4 miles if needed. And so here I am. Today we're going to talk about aquaculture. We're going to talk about fish. For those who don't know, aquaculture is part of agriculture. And for the past 3 days, we've been talking about plants, and now it's about time we talk about something other than plants. Let us meet Franz O. Joseph. Franz O lives in Haiti with his family. He's about 28 years old. He's married. He's here with his wife and daughter. And Franz O has 2 other kids. By modern standard, Franz O is considered poor. He's extremely poor. This is his house. He's a fisherman. His dad is a fisherman. But Franz O has nothing to fish because all the lakes and reservoirs are completely empty. They've been overfished over the years. So Franz O is a prime candidate for a Peace Corps volunteer, a church mission group, who in the 70s, 80s, 90s will go to countries like, or a continent like Africa, Southeast Asia, and say, well, I'm going to, give Franz O a fish pond so that he can feed himself and his family. Because it was all about nutrition. But this was then. Now, things are different. So now, let's see how different they are. We don't want Franz O to feed himself only. We want Franz O to feed other people. and feed others in such a way that it is profitable to him, that it generates revenues to him. So it goes beyond food. It is about wealth. So how do you get Franz O to go from just feeding himself to feeding others? Is what we're going to see. Expert has always thought that the oceans were our salvation to human nutrition because of the immensity, the big, a lot of water. But now we realize that only 10% are productive. 90% are desert. In 2014, marine fisheries accounted for over 93 million tons of fish. One would think that's a lot. Well, we are about 7.4 billion people now. And they predict that will be 9 billion at least in 2050. That's a lot of mouth to feed. And marine fisheries is leveling off. About 10 years ago, it has decreased, and then about 5 years ago, started to go up, and then leveling off. And people are eating more fish. Human nutrition is evolving from being pure carnivores, eating meat, into eating seafoods. But as the world population is increasing, we have to find other sources. And the likely candidate is aquaculture, what we call sustainable aquaculture. Aquaculture has had a bad rap because in the past, people saw that it was going to make big money. And they were all over the place with very little control and very little regard to environment. But for the past 20 years, with research, better research, better what we call management practices, we have made a lot of progress in aquaculture. For the first time in 2013, marine capture was equal to aquaculture production. By 2014, it went over. And by 2015, aquaculture accounted for 106 million tons, generated $163 billion in what we call first sales. first sales is sales at farm gate. And how much do you think someone like Franz O would have gotten out of that about 20 years ago? Zero. Absolutely zero. And this is what we've tried to change over the past 10 years. Out of the 106 million tons that were produced, 51% of it was finfish. And the reason why I mention it is that finfish are the easiest to grow. And that's why most of the small farmers, we call them small-scale farmers, small farm holders, that's what they fish. That's what they actually culture. That's, finfish are tilapia, carps, trouts. That's a lot. Finfish alone contributed for $82.9 billion. But if you look at Africa, where we have, about the bulk of small-scale farmers, contributed only to 2.3% of that. And the Americas didn't do that well, 4.3%. So out of all this, big production, big money, if you put both of them together, 6.6%. That's too small. That's too small. Of course, we all know China is a big producer. Okay. All of Asia in general, 84%. China alone accounts for 60%. But you look at Africa, 10%. You look at America, 4%. And when we say America, we have North America, Central America, and the Caribbean. More than 18 million people actually farmed. Latin American, Caribbean, 1.9%, over 3.5 million people. Africa, 2.6 million people are actually farming. Are they doing right? Not quite. If you look at, for example, the tilapia production, in 2016, contributed for $9.8 billion. Again, over 75% of small farmers are farming tilapia. How much of this $9.8 billion they got? Less than 3%. So the reason why I'm giving you all these numbers is that there is a lot of money out there. A lot of money. why are the small farm holders do not or cannot get this money? That's a big part of gold. Because they're not competitive. They're too small. They're lacking a lot of things. If you were here on Monday, one of the lecturers, Putso, told you that small farmers do not have money. Well, you saw Franz O. Franz O does not have money. He doesn't have the capital. He cannot go to a bank and borrow money. I can. He can't. Putso also talk about seeds. Well, in aquaculture, our seeds, we call them fingerlings. They're the same thing. We need high quality fingerlings to grow. Where do you think Franz O will get his fingerlings? Can't. To grow fish, you need high quality feed. You know, aquaculture had a bad rap because we were polluting the environment. And one of the things that was polluting the environment was the type of feed that they were using, and also the chemicals and everything that is involved in it. Well, we have gotten better over the year. The technology has gotten better. You have more regulations. Government officials are looking more into what we're doing. But Franz O does not have access to good quality feed. He doesn't even know where to get good quality feed. Our friend Dan Godal talked about cold chain. Well, Franz O's idea of cold is when the temperature falls below 80 degrees. He doesn't know anything about cold chain. So he cannot compete. It costs him about 80 cents to $1 for him to grow the fish. In a nice restaurant in Haiti, a good dish of tilapia costs about $23. So where is the money within between goes? We need to get a little bit of that money back to Franz O. And there are ways to do that. So that's why, many years ago, I decided, well, let's rethink how we promote aquaculture. Let's set aside the idea of just going somewhere and say, well, you know what? I'm going to feed Franz O and his family. They need the protein. 150 grams of fish provide between 50 to 60% of your daily protein requirement. It's good. So, we go over there, we said, okay, you know what? We're going to help you raise fish so that we can improve your diet. But as I said, it goes beyond just feeding people. Okay? People have to send their kids to school. They need health care when they're sick. they need better housing, they need a lot of things. So it goes beyond food alone. If you look at the country where I'm coming from, Haiti, about 10.8 million people. The GDP per capita is over $800. But if you go to the country, you don't see it. Why? Because you have 5% that own 95% of the wealth, and they don't invest in the country. We almost do not have middle class in Haiti, and you have the rest, 95%, that have to share all the resources. Over 48% actually know how to read and write. Illiteracy is really high. You have about a little over 52%, 52, even more now, that earn less than $1 a day. That's what the UN call extreme poverty. Franz O, before our program, used to earn 80 cents a day. Over 72% of the population earn less than $2 a day. And for people who have been to Haiti, know that the place is quite expensive. So a lot of people are missing out. In 2005, I came up with a model. Now, I don't want you to think that I'm kind of, smart guy, invented something. No, I didn't invent anything. I went out there, I looked at what people are doing, took several ideas, put them in a pot, stir the pot, okay, and try to make it better. And how I came up with, I initially called it foster aquaculture. And then somebody told me, yeah, we don't like the term foster aquaculture. Talk about cluster aquaculture, or it can be cluster farming. What it is that you take an institution, a leading institution. It can be a private company, it can be an NGO, somebody has to take the lead. And what I'm going to talk to you about can be applied for poultry or in vegetables. So this model is not specific to aquaculture. It can be applied to other type of agricultural cultures. You take an institution and you said, you know what? Franz O doesn't have access to credit. It doesn't have money. I can provide him with the initial capital investment. So he doesn't have to worry about that. Franz O doesn't have access to fingerlings. That's okay. You don't have to worry about that. I will take care of that. Franz O doesn't have to worry about feed. I will take care of that. And I will provide Franz O with the proper training. All he has to do is raise fish. grow fish. And when it is done, I will just come, take the fish, do the processing, sell the fish, do all kind of advertisement, and then come back and share the profit with Franz O. Everybody, including my wife, thought I was crazy. But we did it. And you can do it with poultry. Imagine you have 200, 300 small farmers. You provide them with the chicks. You provide them with the feed. They grow the chicks to, chicken. You come back, pick at them, process, do the distribution, and then come back and share the profit with them. You can do it with tomatoes, all kind of culture. It's doable. And we did it. The first thing we did was to build in Haiti the largest fish hatchery in all the Caribbean. It's 100% solar operated. This is where we produce the baby fish. We're doing tilapia, we're doing freshwater shrimp, what we call freshwater prawn, we're doing that. So we grow them until they're 2 months old. And then we take them to the farmers. Right now, throughout Haiti, we're working with 254 farmers. Each of them has 2 of these cages. Each cage holds up to 2,400 fingerlings. All Franz O has to do is feed his cages 3 times a day. It takes him about 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes around noon, and 30 minutes in the afternoon. That's all he has to do. That's all he has to do. So he'll go them for 4 months. So they spend 2 months in the hatchery, 4 months out there in the lake, and we have 14 sites all over Haiti where we're doing that. We provide Franz O with high quality feed coming out of Valdosta, Georgia. Okay. And the reason why we're doing that is that we're using natural environment. And we don't want to pollute that environment. So we are using feeds that has the highest feed conversion ratio. Feed conversion ratio is the quantity of meat that you're getting from the feed that you're giving the fish. So the animal is turning the feed into meat. And we have a feed conversion ratio going from 1.2 to 1.4, which means that if we give them a 1.2 pounds of feed, we're getting 1 pound of meat in it. So the waste going into the environment is very small. But Franz O cannot come to Valdosta, Georgia, and buy fish food. So we doing that for him. And then the fish go into a processing plant. We have refrigerated truck that will go from the plant to the production site, get the fish, because at all time, the fish has to be in a temperature below 70 degrees. At all time. From the time it comes out of the cages all the way to the processing plant, and from the processing plant to the market. That's where the fish is cleaned, packaged, and then sent to hotels, restaurants, supermarkets, everywhere. We do the marketing. We sponsor events. We are the official sponsor of the Haitian federation, swimming federation. We are the official sponsor. But the other things, we promote a fish. We put out pamphlets that we give to doctors to talk about the benefit of eating fish. Is high in phosphorus. Which is good for your brain. So pregnant women should eat a lot of fish. You see? So thank you for giving me a chance to advertise. Eat more fish. Okay. And then, when all is said and done, we said, okay, you know what, Franz O? You get 40% of our profit, not revenue, but the profit. First of all, he gets to keep 10% for his own consumption. So we only sell 90%. Usually the biggest one, okay? So Franz O gets the smaller one, but that's okay with him. Because now he likes the money better. So he gets 40% of the profit. 20% of that profit will go to a community fund, and then we keep 40%. The revenues, and in fact, this is net revenues for our farmers, has gone from $1,500 to over $5,000 a year. Remember earlier I told you that the GDP per capita was 813? While the farmers in our program make more than the average income of Haitian. And 99% of them are uneducated. They've never been to school. As I said, we put 20% into a community fund. And what do we do with the community fund? This used to be Franz O's village. You saw him in front of his house. That used to be his village. Now this is his village. Before, he couldn't send his kids to school. Now, using the community fund, We send the kids to school. We pay the professors. In fact, he's the one paying the professors because he's the one doing most of the work, but we're the one keeping the money. We invest in healthcare. We have a program with the University of Florida, and the program has been going on for the past 5 years, where each year they send a team of medical doctors, students, pharmacists, and nurses to Haiti. And we do a clinic that we do it twice a year in the spring and in the fall. This year, actually in 2017, they saw over 2,000 patients. Yesterday, Kathy Bryson was talking about vitamin A. That's a nutritionist from the University of Florida administering vitamin A to kids, to babies. And she's been doing that for 5 years in our program and following their growth, their development. So by going beyond nutrition, you just saw that there are a lot of things that can be done. And now, the program is expanding. We think that by the end of 2018, we'll reach the level of 400 farmers. And our goal by 2020 is 750 farmers. If you put it into monetary value, because we've been talking about money, it's about total revenues of about $8 to $10 million a year. In perspective to the $160 billion that I talked about earlier, that's small, but still that's considerable for a country like Haiti. And so imagine that if you do it in Haiti, that you get about $10 million. You do it in countries in Africa, hey, we'll get something out of this $1 billion that people are talking about. Right now, we talking about the government in Ghana. They have the largest man-made lake in the world, about implementing the program over there. And our organization is also thinking about Nicaragua to start with. And then we hope that, within the next, let's say, 5 or 10 years, many more countries, especially countries in Africa, who have natural lakes, because it's a lot easier to do with natural lakes than fish ponds, that we, will be able to propagate this model and then take a big bite into that big pot of gold. Thank you.
For questions. So if you have a question for Dr. Valentin, please raise your hand. Nate will come by with a microphone, and all right, Dr. Price will start over here. Just try to keep your questions brief and to the point so we can get the answer as quickly as possible.
Do you have to hire night guards to protect those fish in the cages?
No, what we do is that we have the farmers themselves do the protection. So in some areas, what they will do is that they will organize themselves, as visual groups, and guard their product.
Right here, Nate.
Good morning. I don't know if I'm on. Some of us are involved in tree planting, and that's one of the things I do. And I'm very interested in finding a product from the sea or from aquaculture that can be used as a fertilizer for tree production, for that sort of thing, whether it's fish or whether it's plankton or something like that. Is there something that we can add as a fertilizer for our plants and trees?
Oh, yeah. Earlier you saw the hatchery, and you saw how green the water was. I mean, very green water. That's pure organic fertilizers, okay? And that's water that we have a program around the hatchery where we, provide, when we do water exchange in the tanks, we, actually provide this nutrient-rich water to the farmers around. So it's a big farming community, and we have a network of pipes that goes to different directions and provide the water. Now you saw the processing plant, all the fish waste, okay, the guts, what we call the guts. We have a grinder, okay? So you grind it, okay? And you can use it, you also use it as, you can use it as animal feed, but you can also use it as a fertilizer. Now, the only problem is with the fish gut, they spoil very easily. So it's not something that, they don't have a long shelf life, so it's something that you have to use immediately. If not, you have to mix it with acid to kill all the bacteria, but then you cannot use it as organic, to produce organic products.
Okay, we have a question in the back.
I love the model and what you're doing. The only point I see in it that is maybe room for improvement would be to be able to get the feed, the fish feed itself from Haitian farmers. And I wonder if you've looked into extruder technologies and if you think there's high quality enough inputs of the feed. I'm assuming there's some soy blend and other grains that are involved in making the feed. Do you think you could get it from the Haitian farmers if you could get the technology to produce the feed?
Well, we've been talking about that for the past 5 years, and the U.S. government through USAID has been wanted to fund a feed processing plant in Haiti, and so it's something that we've talked about. It has been done yet. The money is available. The only problem is ingredients. Our feed is about 70% corn. And when talking about Haiti and corn, you're competing with human consumption because corn is used in human diet. And so when we looked at the data, there's no way, unless we increase corn production, that we'll have enough corn to run the feed mill. Soybean, because the second ingredient is soybean. We don't produce soybean, so we have to bring soybean from outside. But the main ingredient is corn, and we don't produce enough corn. So until we do that, it will be kind of pointless to put a feed mill. But we're working on it, and the money is available. The money there.
We have another question in the far back.
Yeah, quick question for you. Capital infusion is one of the big success stories in your model. Can you describe the front end of the process with the getting investors, getting the capital to start the process, how much people invest, and how that works?
Okay. First of all, to set up a farmer, it costs $1,300. Okay, to set up that's a capital investment for a farmer, and we've been working with several institutions. We've received grants through the Clinton Foundation. We've received grants from the U.S. government, USAID, and that's, and also we've received grant from the Kellogg Foundation. Okay, so, there are areas where we got, the bulk of our funding to, has a capital seed for the different programs that.
All right, Kathy has a question here. Just wait for the mic 1 second.
What about using the fish guts as part of your feed? That's a resource that you have right there.
Yes. Unfortunately, I said unfortunately, the guts of, from the processing plant will encompass for only 2.3% of the feed. So yes, you can use it to improve the protein content of the feed, but you don't want too much protein on the feed. But yes, we do use the feed guts also.
Okay, and one last question. Sorry, I know there's others who have questions, but just one last question.
Sure, thanks. How do you deal with the ammonia in the water and the fish waste?
We're using, you didn't see in the picture, that's why we have all the solar panels up there. That's because we use a recirculating system. Okay, so we run the tanks through filters. Okay, and that's why we're using. Right now we have 130 kilowatt of solar energy just to run the filters and the aeration system.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.